Simcha, celebration, Simcha, Simcha, celebration of life.
Welcome to Simcha, a celebration of life. I'm your host, Eitan Berger. By his own admission, Shani Krebs didn't fall in with a bad crowd. He was the bad crowd. Born to Hungarian refugees in Johannesburg, Shani had a tough childhood. As a young man, he lived a life that was wild, filled with girlfriends, narrow escapes, and drug binges. Then, at the age of 34, his life was set to change.
I grew up in these industrial mining towns. At the age of 11, I was admitted to Arcadia, where I stayed till my matric years. I started experimenting with marijuana in matric, and then I went to the army. I continued experimenting or smoking weed, which started off as a recreational thing, but eventually it became a daily habit. After the army, I got into the clothing trade. So I became like a salesman. I was making good money. And I went through stages with drugs and in and out of jobs, getting fired. And eventually I was dealing drugs to support a habit. Beginning of 1994, I was involved in a shooting with a policeman. So I was arrested and charged with attempted murder. So my life had just been spiraling out of control. And then I had 2 overdoses in a matter of 4 months where I almost died. And at that time, my cocaine supplier got involved in smuggling heroin from Thailand to New York, which is also referred to as China White, the Golden Triangle, which consisted of Thailand, Burma, and Laos, or Vietnam, one of those countries. So we set up the deal and everything from South Africa, and I flew across to Bangkok. I've never been there. I had no idea of the consequences of being caught with drugs or anything. I was aware that Malaysia and Singapore carried out the death penalty. But also, I kind of was at a stage in my life where I always felt invincible. I'd always escaped the law. I cheated death a couple of times. So carrying the drugs across countries or continents didn't really bother me. I was in it for the money, and I was in it so I could buy more drugs. Eventually, I met up with the guys in Thailand in Bangkok, who were going to supply me with the drugs. So we met actually on the fire escape of an hotel. And I met the guy, handed over the balance of the money, and he said I should give him like 3 minutes. And then I should go up 1 floor and the drugs will be there on the landing, which I did. The drugs were put into a leather satchel that had these compartments, like 3 compartments that had been compressed and done very professionally and sewn into the leather bag. So unless you knew it was there, you wouldn't be able to detect it. So I had it in my room for a couple of days. Cut a long story short, at that time I was suspecting that I was being watched. Anyway, I arrived at the airport, and I remember saying a little prayer. I asked Hashem to close the eyes of the custom officials, and I made a pact with him that if I got through, I would stop dealing drugs, I would stop using drugs. So the bags went through the X-ray machine, no problem. And strangely enough, the departure lounge, there were no other passengers. I was the only passenger, which I thought was kind of weird. And then I started really getting nervous. And then when I approached the counter, the attendant, the woman who was checking the passports, wouldn't make eye contact with me. So through the corner of my eye, I noticed some movement, and there was like a SWAT team. They were in black uniforms with Uzi machine guns and walkie-talkies. And before I knew it, I was surrounded, and they pointed straight to the leather bag that I was carrying, which was on the floor, and said, "Is this yours?" And I said, "Yes, it's mine." So they didn't even bother to look at my other luggage. They picked up the leather bag and asked me to follow them. was taken to like a security room, and they emptied the contents of the bag, and with a standing knife just proceeded to cut it open, pulled out the heroin, did an immediate test on it. It was 100% pure. And then I was interrogated by the Thailand Drug Suppression Unit, and after that by the DEA. From there, I was taken to a police station in Bangkok, and eventually we got to the prison. It was called Bombard Prison. We were marched in single file. Afterwards, they checked our stuff. We weren't allowed to keep much, just a change of clothing, some toiletries, and the rest of our stuff was put into storage. We were then shackled. We were taken to this contraption where they put these chains on us, like a steel ring that was fitted around our ankles. And they put our leg in this vise, and when they pulled it down, it closed the steel ring. And there was a Thai prisoner there who had a 10-pound hammer and just hammered it closed to make sure. The links were about 1.5 inches thick. They were quite big, about 27 links, which, I was totally blown away. It was the most inhumane thing. When they put these chains on me, I just couldn't understand what was going on. It was like, this can't be happening. It's a nightmare.
In 1994, Shani Krebs was arrested in Thailand for carrying 2.2 kilograms of heroin. His death sentence was commuted to 100 years, and the long years of navigating prison life began. Before being caught, he had felt invincible, as he had been getting away with living on the edge for 16 years. However, time in jail offered him an opportunity to reflect on what he had done.
Having an addictive personality, I had no purpose in life. So basically, I was always chasing a high, living on the edge. Life was meaningless, basically. So I don't know what the appeal was. Maybe the euphoric feeling. Maybe I was trying to suppress the pain. And, I'd got away with so much all my life, and now I was caught. So a part of me understood that probably going to prison was my destiny. Just those initial first 2-3 weeks, but it just wasn't making sense. So I was deeply disturbed and angry, and as far as I was concerned, there wasn't a God, and He protected me all this time, and when I needed Him, He didn't come through for me. So there was all that aspect to it as well, the anger and not understanding. Once we were shackled, we were then taken upstairs to a cell where we were approximately 100 inmates. It was completely overcrowded. We had to sleep in shifts. Some of the guys would sit around while others slept. And still, my faith, I was always questioning Hashem, and I couldn't understand why to be there. And I got to Angkwan. I met this Burmese guy there who was a heroin addict. He was a brilliant musician. He also had a life sentence. And he was drawing these pencil portraits, which he would charge a carton of cigarettes for. And then he would sell that. Cigarettes are a form of currency in prison. Sell that and buy heroin, which he would shoot. So I gave him a photo of my sister and my niece to draw. And when he finished drawing it, I signed my name on it and I sent it home to my sister. And eventually they got it, and then she wrote back and sent me more photos and said, gee, wow, this is brilliant, and then I felt kind of guilty, thinking, well, I've drawn this picture, I've deceived them. So I went to this Burmese guy, his name was Tin Seo, and I said to him, I'm in trouble, man. My family sent all these things. I can't afford to give you like 5, 6, 7 cartons. So you better teach me how you draw the portraits. And that's how I started drawing portraits. And he taught me the scale system. So within no time, I developed my artistic skills. and then I started working in pen. So most of my days started being taken up with drawing. In 1999, I was involved in quite a huge fight. It was very violent. I was shackled again and thrown into solitary confinement. And just prior to that happening, I started corresponding with this lady called Edna Ralph. She lives in Manchester. They with Chabad, very religious, and she sent me a Siddur. And she was actually, my case was quite well publicized. And also I appeared in quite a few magazines, in the Jewish newspaper, and my address was given. So she started writing to me and trying to encourage me to study Judaism and to pray. And so when I went to solitary, I took a couple of books of me with Judaism, and I took my Siddur. And it was around that time that I started actually reconnecting with Hashem, understanding, because now I'd been clean almost 3 years and 4 years. And I understood that going to prison was actually a blessing in disguise, because if I didn't go, who knows what would have happened to me. So in solitary, I managed to get a A4 pad and some watercolor into the cell. I was locked up 24 hours, just sleeping on a concrete floor. I had no bedding, there was no fan, there were no lights. The only light that I had filtered in from the passage. There were huge cockroaches, and it was very damp and musky. The water was dirty, the shower water. But for the first time in my life, I felt free. I never felt more free spiritually. And I started praying, and I connected with Hashem. And, also having destroyed people's lives with drugs. Even before that, I was already started drawing people's portraits and sending them to different parts of the world. And I was now bringing joy to their lives. So my whole artistic development was very intertwined with my artistic development and me evolving as a person. So I always said I would go through 3 stages of spiritual involvement as an artist and as a person before I would be emancipated. And then understanding all that, it didn't matter where I was, because I was doing what I love most, and that was expressing myself through art. So it was a long process for also the anger to dissipate. And then once I understood all that, I became quite content. But also at the same time, there was always that element of danger. By that stage, I'd witnessed a couple of murders. A guy was murdered right outside my cell in solitary. And it was dangerous because everybody had weapons, and especially after that first fight, I had a hell of a reputation after that as a person who doesn't take nonsense from anybody. And there were several situations where that were extremely dangerous, that I had to confront not one person but several people. And even then, it's almost like Hashem was protecting me. And I was rediscovering who I was. When I was in matric, my dream was to study fine art and to become an art teacher. And I was now realizing my dreams behind prison bars. So it was actually quite a magical thing in a way. Art actually was my escape from my reality. And then, having reconnected with Hashem, because I started davening 3 times a day and in solitary. And it was funny because one of the prayers that always stuck with me was the Shema Israel. So even in those initial days where I was angry with God and I thought, well, God doesn't exist, but every time when I felt down, I would say the Shema. And about 2007, we managed to bribe one of the guards to bring in tefillin. So I didn't actually put on tefillin. Although I was davening 3 times a day, I didn't put on tefillin, I just kept it. And then when I was moved in 2011, to Klong Prem, I wasn't allowed to take much stuff with me. So basically just a change of clothing, toiletries, etc., stuff to write letters. So I took my writing pad and I took my siddur and my tefillin with me. I don't know why, but I just felt that it had something, there was something that I would not, because I wasn't laying tefillin, so there was no point in taking it with. But I thought, let me take it. And then when I landed up in solitary confinement, because I was classified as being dangerous, I started to understand that actually Hashem was preparing me for my freedom. So while I was in solitary, the friend of mine, Ian Malta, who I met through correspondence, sent me a prayer from a prominent rabbi in Israel. And the prayer was, I had to recite this prayer 10 times a day. And it spoke about being released. And I understood that it wasn't about physical freedom, but rather about spiritual freedom. And even being in solitary, it didn't bother me, knowing that I'd be going free and that I was reconnecting. Because prior to that, although I prayed 3 times a day, it became more of a routine. So I would rush through my prayers, although I always had this special relationship with Hashem. I had lost the sincerity. So getting all that back and putting on tefillin changed a lot. It changed me. It made me peaceful. So reconnecting with Hashem made my suffering that much easier, and accepting it.
In 1994, 34-year-old Shani Krebs was arrested for heroin trafficking in Bangkok. Initially condemned to death, his sentence was commuted to 100 years and then 40 years. Due to the Thai royal celebrations, over the next decade, his sentence was gradually reduced until he was granted amnesty by the king on the 15th of December 2011.
The day that I was released, I mean, you can imagine how exciting it was. I was taken to this tower where I waited 2 hours for the police to come and fetch me, a police escort. Then I walked out the prison and, I just thought back. I thought, gee whiz, the time flew. I mean, where did the 18 years go? And 18 symbolically means chai in Hebrew, life. So it was very emotional. I mean, even I felt sad in a way because, for one thing, I felt triumphant for having actually got through prison and coming out alive. And then another part was I was leaving a lot of my friends behind. So I kind of left a part of my soul in the prison, knowing that they still had to go through what I went through. But it was my time. And then we landed at Oliver Tambo about 6:45. And anyway, then I was just literally swamped by the media, my friends. It was an amazing feeling. I found that I started employing my survival skills that I did in prison, in society, because I felt very disconnected. It's like I didn't belong here. I missed prison. I missed certain aspects of prison, the comradeship, the structured life. So also, there was this need to make a living and to bring in money, So there was that side which was difficult. So I started off by giving talks, and also some of my paintings. I sold some of my paintings. A lot of my paintings have got faces in it, distorted faces, because from the time that I've come out, it represents all the people that I've connected with. So I've met so many different people and some amazing people, and that's one of the biggest blessings in my life is the people that I've met and the people that I've become friends with. And these people inspire me. And early into my confinement, in my letters, I used to write to my sister telling her, I want to write a book one day, and I need to tell my story because I want especially kids to become more aware of the consequences of drugs and drug addiction and drug smuggling. Initially, I was going to call it Bringing Heaven to Hell, which was similar to one of Rabbi Menachem Schneerson's books, which I think Bringing Heaven to Earth or something, because actually my hell was my heaven in prison. But then, I'm covered in tattoos. So most of my tattoos are of dragons and butterflies. So which became very symbolic of who I am. The dragon being my dangerous side, and the butterfly being my feminine and artistic side, which I think we all have, like soft and hard, yin and yang. So that's how the dragon, that's how I came about the title. And my book's taken off it's just gone absolutely crazy. I can't actually believe how people have responded to it. It's everybody's talking about it. It's a page turner. So, and I know it's impacting lives. And for me, that was the primary reason why Dragons and Butterflies was written. It was to share my story and hopefully to inspire other people, because everybody's got a story. So by sharing it, it actually gives us a different perspective of our own lives. With captivity comes a certain spiritual freedom, and with freedom comes a spiritual captivity, because we're so focused on all the demands society puts on us. So I'm very strong in my faith, and I would say that I'm a very spiritual person, but I'm not religious in the conventional sense. But I've lost that connection. I'm trying to get it back. I go to shul every Friday night, and just 2 Saturdays ago I started going on Saturday morning. I don't put on tefillin, but I still say the Shema Yisrael every morning and every night. I made all the wrong choices, and it's a miracle that I survived. And that also confirms my belief that Hashem had a purpose for me, because He protected me. Although He put me through all of what I went through, there was His way of showing me and revealing to me what my purpose would be. People say, wow, 18 years is such a long time and you lost out on so much. But when I think about it, actually I didn't lose much. I gained so much more, because I rediscovered who I was. And my art, this is what came from it. So something beautiful did come from it. So do I regret? Do I have regrets? On some levels, I regret having destroyed other people's lives. But that was my journey. And sometimes we can't control our destiny. That's how it was meant to be.
That's all we have time for this week's episode of Simcha. Thank you so much for joining us. If you'd like to catch up on any previous week's episodes, please find them on our website, www.spiritsister.co.za. From me, Eitan Berger, and the whole team here at Simcha, have a great week and goodbye.